In 2016, when I left Bloomberg, I had to make a decision. Do I go back into a job situation? And I said, no, I think this is the time for me really to dig deep.
Meet Tariq Qureishy, visionary futurist, media leader, and founder of Mad Talks.
What's that equation look like?
I created something called the equation of the future, and I, inspired by Einstein, is E is equal to mc squared. I don't sell the future anymore. I do talk about the future, but I talk about it through the lens of context, humanity, experience, feel, touch, intuition, all of those things. And that is what I call the modern futurist storyteller, and that's who I am.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Hope It Helps. And guys, today I have a very, very special guest. I'd like to welcome to the show Mr. Tariq Qureishy. Tariq, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Khalid. It's a real pleasure to be here in your lovely home studio.
Thank you.
It's really cool. Well done.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So Tariq, just to give the audience some context. So Tariq and I met about almost a month ago now. Yes. I can't believe it's been a month already. At the Hack Seasons conference, which I was emceeing, and Tariq was the actually ended the day as the speaker. And Tariq is a futurist. So just to give you some context, when I do research about a guest, Tariq, I get one of three options. Either the guest doesn't have a good social presence, so I have to get creative with questions, or they have maybe they have a book or whatever, so it's not too bad. And then you have someone like you who's on the other extreme. I'm like, man, there's too much information for me to watch all of this and collate. So I did the best I could with all the information that's out there. Right. So Tariq has a career, guys, that spanned over 25 years as a CEO, entrepreneur. You've spoken on keynote stages, over 400 keynotes, over 1,500 interviews, and now you've reinvented yourself as a futurist and are championing. I think you're one of the leading voices right now globally that is kind of guiding us on, guys, this is where we're heading, this is what we need to pay attention to, and if we don't take care, we're going to be in trouble in not a very long time. So for today, Tariq, I want to talk about the future. Everyone talks about AI. I've had so many conversations about AI, but for today's conversation, I didn't want it to be so AI focused. I wanted it to be more holistic and general and more from a human and mindset and psychological perspective. But before we get into all of that, Tariq, why don't you give all of us a little bit of background about yourself, and we'll take it from there.
Absolutely, Khaled. Thank you for the wonderful introduction. You have done your research. So,
thank you.
So thank you for that. I've been a lifelong career professional. Worked with Dow Jones, Wall Street Journal. I was head of Europe, Middle East, and Africa. I was the publisher and the CEO of the Times and Sunday Times newspaper, brought it to the Middle East in 2007. Then with Bloomberg Media for 5-6 years, till 2015, 2016. And many things happened, perhaps we'll get into it later. But in 2016, I decided to reinvent myself, the third time in my life. And this time it was really, what do I do now? Because the world is changing so quickly, and I could sort of intuitively feel it, but I wasn't quite there. I've always been future-oriented. I've been innovative. I have always been a maverick, and that's been my strength and my weakness. And I'll talk about the problems of being first in many cases, because I have lost a lot because I was first, and I was ahead of the game and ahead of the curve. But anyway, in 2016, when I left Bloomberg, I had to make a decision. Do I go back into a job situation? And I left Bloomberg at a time when I was doing really well and circumstances didn't work out. And I said, no, I think this is the time for me really to dig deep and reinvent myself as an entrepreneur, but not just as a startup entrepreneur, but as a futurist. And in 2016, there were hardly any futurists. So when I put that on LinkedIn, people saying, what the hell is that? Today, every second person is a bloody futurist. I mean, come on. It has been so diluted that, it's almost become irrelevant. And one of my mentors and partners, Professor Hendrik von Schiele, he redefined me. He said, you're a futurist storyteller. And you have the capacity to take business, technology, and all the infrastructure on the one side, and then the human aspect on the other side. And you are the absolute bridge, and you do it through stories. And that's what I do, and that's what my book is. I'll share the book when we have a break. And that is that. So this is where I restarted my life. Literally, it was all control delete in 2016. But over the last 8-9 years, I have researched a lot. I have attended any program that I could think of. And the idea was to open up my mind. And Alvin Toffler is a very famous philosopher of the 70s and 80s, an educationist. And he said the illiterate of the future are not going to be the ones who cannot read or write. They will be the ones who cannot unlearn, learn, and relearn. And those are the illiterate of the future. Unlearn, learn, and relearn. And today's illiterate of the future are those who will not unlearn our own bad habits and learn about AI, learn about using it. To me, AI in the future is like reading and writing. AI in the future is PowerPoint and Excel. Literally, it is as prevalent as that. And the whole thing is that we won't see it, but it'll be there. It'll be like electricity and water. We don't care where it comes from and so on, but it's going to be there. So I went through this process of what is called the 10,000 hours of mastery, which basically is that you can take any topic or you can take any project, and over 10,000 hours, you can start becoming an expert. And I believe humbly that I think I've crossed that 10,000 mark. Because now things happen to me quite naturally, and I'm just literally plug and play, and off I go. And the critical question, Khalid, there is that 8 years ago when I started out, I was 8 years ahead. 6 years ago, I was 6 years ahead. 3 years ago, I was about 1 or 2 years ahead. Now, I'm barely 3 to 6 months ahead. Literally. The reason is people have caught up, number one. And they've caught up in terms of jargon. They've caught up in terms of general technologies and what they are. But what they don't know, and what I have learned over the last 6, 7, 8 years, is context, is the understanding of how the dots connect with each other, all the stories that go around it, and how things have evolved. And to me, I don't sell the future anymore. I do talk about the future, but I talk about it through the lens of context, humanity, experience, feel, touch, intuition, all of those things. And that is what I call the modern futurist storyteller, and that's who I am.
Well, thank you so much for that amazing introduction, Tariq. Really appreciate it. And it's very helpful for the audience to get context of who you are and how we got here. So you said something interesting right there, which is that the rate of change has accelerated so much, and you decided to reinvent yourself all those 9 years ago because you could sense that things are changing at an exponential rate. Now, I love what you said at the beginning, that the word futurist has been diluted.
Yes, diluted.
Right now.
It's toast.
But the question I have for, let's say there's someone out there who doesn't know what that means. Let's start here. Could you explain to us, what is a futurist? Is it something that is self-proclaimed? Is it something I can work to become? How do you, like, if I pointed you to someone and be like, hey, Tariq, is that guy a futurist? Mm-hmm. What are the criteria you're going to use to justify whether he is or he isn't?
Fair enough. A futurist is somebody who has a love for the future, looks and understands how the future is shaping, and has the ability to bring it back in today's terms in a way that you would be able to understand.
Okay.
So that's number one. A futurist is a person who looks at technologies and all of the exponential changes that are happening there. A futurist is a person who is able to tie the technologies to society and to humanity. And anybody who doesn't do that, he's a techie. He's not a futurist.
I see.
Because you need to bring it in and connect it. And if you don't, then you've lost the plot. So one of the taglines that I have is that the more technological the world becomes, the more human you need to be. Because anything that can be digitized will be, because it'll be 1,000,000 times faster and 1,000,000 times cheaper. But anything and everything that cannot be digitized, love, harmony, compassion, heart, soul, spirit, imagination, creativity, judgment, wisdom, ethics, all of these things will be 1,000,000 times more valuable. And if we cannot bring those back into the core of how the world is evolving, then we really, in my opinion, you're not really a futurist, you're a techie. And that's fine. But it's something to understand that context and pull technology, society, and humanity together and bring it in today's terms. Hopefully, at the end of this session, you will understand at the most human and the most simple level what futurism is all about.
Yeah, very interesting. I the way that you described it in bringing that link of the humanity is something I never considered before. But when you put it in that framework, it made sense that without that link, you will always be in two silos, those isolated like buckets. Now, before we get into the more of the future stuff, actually no. So one of the things, Tariq, that captivated me honestly about you, and I'm drawn to people like yourself because I like people who make me think. And when I listened to your talk on stage that day, I was just sitting there and I'm like, I was just honestly in awe, and I'm like, oh my God, there's that. I didn't even think of that. And how did he link this together? But perspective, as you know, probably more than anyone, is the most powerful tool we have. And we can change it in an instant. However, that is also a lot easier said than done. Now, I think as a futurist, though, it makes your job even harder because you're talking about exponential changes. As you know, we are linear thinkers, so we can't even predict what those exponential changes could be. So, and you've said this famously before, we need to change how we think about change. And now we've reached that point. If I came to you and like, Tariq, okay, I want to change how I think about change. How do I start? What do I need to start doing to start changing that mindset?
Okay. So let me redefine your vocabulary.
Okay.
Can you take the word change and throw it out of the window?
Okay.
Change is too slow. Change almost doesn't exist. It's too slow. It's Paleolithic. It's literally snail space now. You have to talk transformation at the very minimum, probably reinvention, like I reinvented myself, and ideally metamorphosis. Because when a caterpillar is eating away, and that's learning and education and so on. Kids are like little caterpillars. And then you go into this pupa and you then liquidize yourself. And then literally you've come out as a beautiful, vibrant, colorful butterfly. But the process is of liquidization before you solidify again. And that's metamorphosis. And a lot of what we need to do is to go through that process of metamorphosis from a caterpillar to a butterfly. Because you can put a ChatGPT into a caterpillar, you can put AI into a caterpillar, it will still not fly. It has to go through that process of reinventing itself, going through that fundamental chemical change. And that is what I have gone through. And that is how I have literally redefined and repositioned myself and come out as this beautiful, hopefully vibrant butterfly. And I can fly now. I can fly away. I think that's one of the key things that we really, really need to be thinking about is it's not just changing, but transforming. So just change your vocabulary and never use the word change again. And there are other words that you shouldn't also use, and I can tell you a story about that. Don't use the word but. But is one of the worst words in the world because what it does, it actually splits your mind. I would have done this, but. If you could have done that, but. So but is literally, it splits the brain gets confused, nothing happens. So word number one to eliminate from your vocabulary is but. The other one you want to eliminate is if. If I had this, I would. If I had the money, I would do this. If I had the, and if becomes an excuse. The way the brain cognitively processes the word if is different. It actually again splits it. So, what we need to do to train our brain cognitively, and part of futurism is to use the word and. I would like to do this and. As opposed to I would like to do this, but. So you shift the if to the and. And the last word, which I know a lot of your audiences will enjoy, is the word try. Forget trying. You do it or you don't. You have it or you don't. And what it does is the brain does not understand the word try. Cognitively doesn't understand it. The instructions are not clear to the brain. Because you tell a child, for example, don't slam the door. What does the kid do? Slam the door. Because he doesn't understand the don't. So the brain has to be trained in a certain way. And so these are the kind of calisthenics and brain gymnasium that we need to go into to be able to be ready for the future. And this is just a little part of it.
Man, that's just listening to you. It's so fascinating, and it's the timing of you saying this is hilarious. I think the world works in funny ways sometimes. Not just 2 hours ago, I was at my parents' house and we're having like an intense conversation, and I'm just replaying like my perspective of the conversation. I maybe said but and if maybe like 10,000 times in that conversation. Yeah. So it's just very refreshing to get a new way to look at it. But I've never had the deeper context of, because I think language is so powerful,
Yes.
yet I think it's underestimated too at the same
Yeah.
time.
We used to have like a swear box in the office, and the swear word was "but." Every time you
Oh, really?
you say
That's
the
awesome.
word "swear," "but" or "if" or "try," you had to put a couple of dirhams in
I
the
love
thing,
that.
and then we used to give it to charity, or used to enjoy it at the end of the week or at the end of the month. And it started changing the way the culture of my office, my sales teams and development teams and so on, because their mindset is there is no "but," there is no "if," there is no "try." And the moment you start removing that, culture shifts. It's actually very interesting, and I'll tell you a story about Amazon. And in the early days of Amazon, they had something called the institutional yes. You were not allowed to say no. This is 2001 to around that sort of time. And so when you came together in meetings and brainstorming and so on, anybody can come up with an idea. And the managers and the decision makers were not allowed, in principle, to say no. If for any huge compliance reason or whatever they have to say no, they have to write a 2-page memo and put it on the door. And said, after a while, you're saying, hang on, Khalid is a jerk. He's saying no to everything. He's been like, and look at his and by the way, he used to stay there. This is a story. I'm sure there is some editorial license there, but. And the interesting thing, and there's this guy who kept on coming back, and he said, "Oh, we've got all of these servers. We should have a web service." And he said, "Dude, we're an e-commerce company. We sell books. What the hell is this web service for?" It's 2001, if you can think that far behind. But the culture was you couldn't say no. So he came back again a month, 2 months later, and said, "Oh, I've developed this web service, and we need to have a web service." Ultimately, they said, "Okay, fine. Dude, go in and give us your business plan and tell us your idea." And that, my friend, was the birth of Amazon Web Services.
Wow.
Because we couldn't say no. That was the key. You couldn't say no. The culture was a yes culture. We have to find it was yes and rather than no but.
Yeah.
So this is how I inspire teams and build teams and so on, and basically say, yeah, the answer is yes. Show me the solution. Now, Amazon Web Service was 85-90% margin business. That is what made Amazon today, only because they had a culture that you couldn't say no.
Yeah.
And I think this is something we need to, in this current world of transformation and reinvention and all of that, we need to start changing our vocabulary, changing our thought processes and so on. You mentioned the word perspective. I do a lot of work on perspective because I have a slide, and then there's a thing in the middle. If you look at it from one side, it looks like a circle. But if you look at it from the other side on the wall, the shadow looks like a square. But actually, it's a cylinder. So there is objective truth. That the objective truth is a cylinder, not a circle, not a square, but a cylinder. Mm-hmm. Guess what social media does? Everything is a circle or a square, because that's where they create the abrasion. That's what drives the clicks. Because if everybody knows the truth, there is no conversation. So if you're sitting in a club and everybody's happy and listening to music, dancing, drinking, whatever, nobody cares. But if there's a fight, everybody looks.
That's true. Very true.
And that's how social media actually drives behavior, trains behavior. It is an engine of. To me, it's a manipulation engine, and creates habits for us, and that's how it does it. It plays with our perceptions and it plays with our brains. So what we need to do is to be extremely careful. And in this world of AI and in this world of change and so on, it is critically important to have critical thinking, to understand the why and why not. And I have a couple of very smart young analysts, and one of them, I was struggling with something to put together a curriculum for a program. And he said, "Oh, don't worry, I'll do it in the next couple of hours." And I said, "I've been working on it for 2 days." Anyway, these are the early days of ChatGPT. He came back with a nice little document, and I'm like, "Dude, this is great." And then I started reading it. lots of words. It was a word salad. Then I said to him, I said, Karan, what does it mean? And he said, well, it looked good, it felt right, but it wasn't quite right. And this is where critical thinking, perception, judgment, understanding, truth, context starts coming in.
Yeah.
And I think this is one of the most important things that we have to look in the future.
I love the example you gave of the cylinder. I think that's such a great thing because there's always, they say to every story there's three sides. There's my side, your side, and then there's the truth.
Yeah.
And I think I never looked at it honestly from the social media context. That's something new to me. But when you put it in that frame, it is like, oh, do you support this team or that team? Do you like this product or that product? Are you with this cause or that cause? There's no, I guess, collaboration or it's almost like the world these days, I feel it's driving to divide, not to unite.
Absolutely, because the more you divide, the more clicks you get. The more antagonism you get. So it's a manipulation engine, it's a habit-forming engine, and that's how the algorithms are written. And that's why one of the reasons why TikTok is doing better than some of the others, because they've worked out the DNA, they've worked out our thinking process, and they have the longest sticking power of staying on, and the next one, and the next one, and they engage with you in that way to create those habits, and it's very difficult to put it off once you start.
It's very true. Very true.
And I think perception is. So you haven't asked me that question, but I'll let me insert that in the conversation because I think in the bigger scheme of things. Let me ask you a question on that. What, in your opinion, do you think is the one thing that will define our future? One big thing that will define our future. Could be an emotion, it could be a technology, it could be anything. One thing.
I think collaboration.
Pretty close. There are elements of collaboration. To me, the word that is going to define our future is trust. Trust. There is a deficit of trust in the world. We don't trust our governments, we don't trust our companies, we don't trust data, we don't trust anything. And there's a huge deficit of that trust. A close brother and sister of that is truth and ethics. And we spoke about the truth, the objective truth for a cylinder. And within these three areas, imagine AI without trust, truth, and ethics. It's a weapon of mass destruction, as you can see, in many, many ways. So we need to be able to have these three reinforcing each other to be able to. So every single thing that I talk about, so one of my first slides in any of my global presentations is trust, truth, and ethics. Without that, there is no future. So as a futurist, I drive that.
Yeah.
That's number one. And the other side is that without empathy, values, and love and joy, what the hell are we here for? So I put these on one slide and say, if you don't remember anything else, remember trust, truth, and ethics is what defines us and shapes us. And empathy, love, values, and joy is what we live for. And then we talk about technology and humanity and everything else, because you've got to start as a baseline. So I think the core, take anything. I mean, take a trust leap. A trust leap is starting a new technology. It's a trust leap. So we need to be able to understand that. So, for example, have you ever stayed in an Airbnb?
Yes, of course.
Right. So have I, and I dare say a lot of your guests. But the fundamental philosophy of living in somebody else's home or somebody living in your home is completely different to, let's say, our parents' time. And why the hell would you have a stranger coming in?
Yeah, like, why are you here? Yeah.
Why are you
It's
here?
my house. Yeah.
So there's a trust leap.
That's true.
Have you got sort of crypto and things like that? Have
Yes.
you bought crypto? A lot of people do. 10, 20% of the people are getting into that. They're all making a trust leap into a technology and into a digital platform and a currency and stuff that they don't quite really understand, but they're hoping that something good will happen. Okay, have you ever found a date on Tinder or something like that? There you go. So how the hell would you go to a complete strange environment, find a person, meet them, and live happily ever after? So all these three things are trust leaps. And in the digital world, we have to now re-engage ourselves with a new environment where we have to find a way to trust. And therefore, trust has become at a premium. Because if you trust the platform, then then it really works. If you don't trust the platform, it won't work. So I was with one of the card companies, MasterCard. I'm an advisor to them in Central Asia, Turkey, and so on. And I asked them once, I said, what business are you in? And they said, we're in the card business, payments business, innovation, technology. I said, yes, all of that is valid. But actually, you're in the trust business. Because if I have your card and I go somewhere, I know I can swipe it, I can pay for my hotel, my airlines. If I'm in trouble, it will save me. I need to trust that card. I said, you're in the trust business and you're in the enablement business. So you are enabling companies, individuals to live their lives comfortably, buy things, have happiness, etc., etc. So the meaning is actually quite important, and that's perception, that's context, that's understanding what business are you in. Let me ask you another one. You're young, so you may or may not know. Do you remember Kodak?
Yes.
Okay. What business were they in? What was the essence of their business?
I think they thought it was cameras.
Correct.
But it was, I think, I know the answer because I watched the talk, so I don't want that. That's the only reason why.
Okay.
But memories.
Memories. They were in the business of memories and moments. Everybody thought it was cameras and film, and I do this in hundreds of places, and it's always cameras and films. I said, okay. Then I asked the follow-on question, who replaced them in 2012? And they say Canon and Fujitsu. I said, you're still thinking product? No. What they were replaced by was Instagram. And Instagram captured that moment of digital photography and basically put it on a platform in a new environment where people used to take that trust leap, share their photographs, and like them, and so on. So they created a new culture. Who invented the digital camera? Kodak. In 1978, 77, 78.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, Kodak invented it. But there were 140,000 people company. We're a global corporation. We've lasted 100 years. Nothing is going to happen to us. So
Famous last words.
Absolutely. So when you think like that, that is where you get blown away. Also, when technology happens, things shift. So, for example, because digital photography is free, that taking the marginal cost of taking an additional picture is zero. Okay, so now in my camera, in my phone, I have 50,000 pictures, 60,000 pictures. That's number one. Two. So the marginal cost is zero. The domain explodes in terms of the number of pictures. And my problem has shifted, rather than taking pictures, in finding pictures. I can't find the bloody things. So this is how we have to see when we go out in business, again as a futurist, is when I go into organizations, I ask, what is the essence of your business? What do you really, really, really do? What if everything else had been leveled out, what is it that you're all about?
Yeah.
Disney, what is Disney about? It's not about theme parks and movies. The tagline is making people happy. That's what they do. So, why does a shawarma shop succeed and another larger restaurant doesn't? And people line up to go to a burger place or a shawarma place. And it could be a service. It could be some kind of connection that they have created. So the essence of their business was not shawarmas and burgers. It's connection. It's humanity. It's relationships. It's nostalgia. You always want to go back to the same place to have a shawarma because you've always done it. So you create habit. So you need to understand, the people who are watching this need to understand and ask themselves this question, because of your podcast, hope it helps. And I hope it helps. Ask yourself the question, what is my business? If everything else is stripped out, if somebody comes in and replaces, like I said with MasterCard, tomorrow is going to be a chip in the brain, or it's going to be a tattoo, or whatever, or it'll be in a glasses or something. It will not be a card. But if the brand is there, the trust is there, the technology underlying is there, they know what business they're in, and they will survive.
If there's such a deficit now of trust in the world, Tariq, and I love the examples you gave of those trust leaps, because again, I never looked at me doing those things I never associated trust with what I was doing. I was just kind of going with the flow and so on. Now, obviously, trust starts small and then it has like a ripple effect and then everyone gets on board. But I think if there's so much distrust in the world now and there's such a deficit, we not only have to break even, we've got to now get back to normalcy and then move forward. So right. If I was going to ask you, if I came to you and I'm like, Tariq, our customers, don't trust us, we're worried. How do I reinstill faith and trust in whatever I'm doing to the outside world? Like, what's that equation look like?
No, it's an extremely valid question. Not easy answer, but I shall attempt. Several things we need to do. Trust. There are 8 different types of trust.
Oh, really? Okay, that's new. Okay.
A lot of people think trust is honesty. Yes, trust is honesty, but there are other kinds of trust also. Trust is also a currency. If people trust you, so it becomes also a currency. So that's the second type. A third one is called ambient trust. Ambient trust is if you're a scientist and at university, everybody loves you because you're coming up with really cool stuff. If you're a doctor in a village, they trust you implicitly because you're a doctor in the village and you help to save people. So I think and there are many other forms of trust. So there are different forms of trust, and I even have what I call a trust barometer. You need to be able to sort of say, these are the elements of trust. Interestingly enough, the top items on trust, I have a chart which I use sometimes. Number 1 is keeping your word and fulfilling your promises that you have made. Simple thing. I will call you at 9 a.m. tomorrow. Call them at 9 a.m. tomorrow. Even if the answer is no, even if the product isn't ready, that starts building trust. 1 and 2 was trust. In trust is reliability and fulfilling simple expectations of simple issues. Product and service was about 5, 6, 7 items down. I have a great product, but people don't trust me. They don't buy. And I think so. You have to start building that. So the tools that I would do, the first thing would be to have a trust barometer in a company. You put the list out, 5 items, and put it from 0 to 10. Where am I on reliability? 7. Where am I on... by the way, competence is also an element of trust. Competent people build trust. But sometimes over-promising by competent people and not being able to fulfill, you lose trust. And I think it's very interesting. I may have the capabilities of, I don't know, I'm in a billboard business, okay? And I do nice outdoors and stuff like that. But if I overstretch myself and I take twice as many orders as my company can absorb, and I am not delivering, it's not my competence. It's not the fact that I'm really not working hard. It's not that I'm not trying very hard. It's just that I overstretched myself and I cannot deliver to the quality that people expect. And that comes with reliability, and that diminishes trust. So there are little tools. So you've got to have a trust barometer is number 1. People have started smelling BS a mile away. I think we're becoming extremely aware, and because of social media, technologies, etc., the attention span is really short, and we pick that up very, very quickly. So the most important thing is to be authentic, is to be real, is to be vulnerable, and and before the end of this session, I'll talk to you about my failures, and I often do. We have the same hairstyle, but I lost my...
Guys, sorry to interrupt, Tariq, just for context. Just how I actually met this beautiful man. We were backstage. Tariq was about to go on stage to speak. Sorry to cut this off, but it's just funny. And we looked at each other. We started talking. Hi, I'm the MC. Hi, Tariq, whatever, getting to know you. And obviously complimented him, his very nice hairstyle. And I just asked him one question. When? And then he told me his story. And we had a whole powwow about the time, once upon a time when we had hair. But that's just a little side tangent.
Once upon a time, I didn't have hair. I had a mane of hair. I actually had very long hair. I was about 24 years of age, and people from our ethnic background, to satisfy our parents, we need to be a doctor, lawyer, accountant, engineer, some professional qualification, 25, 30 years ago.
I can relate.
And basically, my father was going through a rough patch in his life. He took early retirement, etc. So couldn't pay for my university. So he said, son, why don't you go and do accountancy? I said, Dad, but I'm so not a bean counter. I mean, I'm not going to. Anyway, I went there and I did my graduate conversion. I went for chartered accountancy in the UK. I used to live there. And there are only 2 exams in life generally in the UK that you fail. One's your driving test, and the second is your accountancy exams. And I did, and I failed, and I literally failed badly, fell flat on my face, 24 years of age. And I didn't know how to fail. I was a top-level student. I was a great athlete. I was good at, everything. And I never knew how to fail. If I went from A to A minus, I was in deep doo-doos. We were in a highly competitive, I was in the best school in the country. I was doing all sorts of good stuff. Never knew how to fail. And then I worked in sleazy bars. I worked in nightclubs. I worked as a taxi driver. People from my background don't work as now today. Uber driver is routine. 25 years ago, you don't work as a taxi
I
driver.
believe McDonald's as well, right?
And worked at McDonald's at £2.50 an hour.
Yeah.
And used to clean the floors there And one interesting story was, this was Lower Regent Street, and I was in London last weekend, and I actually went there because of nostalgia. The place was called Samantha's. It was a dive. It was terrible. I used to finish around 3:30, and my night bus was at 4:06 a.m., and I had to take a bus. Couldn't take a cab because I couldn't afford it. I used to go and sit in Carnaby Street. There were 2 planks of wood, and it was like a bench, and we all sat there. And I remember distinctly like yesterday. I had a mug of tea, and I had buttered toast. And we used to dunk the toast, something my mum never allowed me because it was not good manners. So at 3:45 a.m., I'm dunking the toast in my tea and having that. My feet are swollen because standing for 8-9 hours, and feet get wet and when you're standing behind a bar. And swollen feet, the whole thing, and I'm having this. And I have prostitutes, dustmen, and across I had an associate professor of philosophy. He couldn't afford to live. So it was all sorts of things. And honestly, that is what made a human being out of me. Because all of my arrogance, all of my I am from this and this is my back, gone, out of my window. And what that 1 year taught me is humility. It's humanity. It's respect, not to judge, because anybody could be in that situation. So I was sitting there from a top family background, etc., next to a drug addict and a prostitute, and I'm having tea together. So what I learned from my failure there was far more than I learned from my success.
Absolutely.
I went to Harvard Business School, and I did all of that, so I did good, cool stuff. But that was my year where I was formed. That was my metamorphosis. That is where I became a human being and came out a much better person. To this day, whether you are the lowest level person in the company, actually I probably speak to them better and nicer and warmer because I empathize with them and connect with them than the chairman of the company. The chairman of the company has a status, and I'm very professional and correct. But I have a soft corner for the little dustman or the security guy downstairs at 2 a.m. in the morning. Poor thing. I mean, they're doing the best they can.
Absolutely.
And made a human being out of me. And I think everybody needs to go through that. Everybody. So what it helps is if you've got a 10, 12, 13-year-old child in Dubai, which is a very privileged environment that we live in, send them to boot camp. Send them. A friend of mine, he does a travel school where you go away for 6 to 8 weeks as part of their credits and so on, and you can go to that school when you're about 15.
That's a great idea.
And 6 to 8 weeks, and these are kids who are doing bad at school, who have ADD, so therefore they're not doing well in their exams, while the other kids are running circles around with their grades and so on. So they get disruptive. What they need to do is work with their hands. What they need to do is to dig something, whatever. So they go to Bosnia, they go to Australia and the deep, the Barrier Reef and things like that. And so they learn about nature. They learn about working with their hands. They learn what they're good at. You do that. Another friend of mine, she sent her son with about $1,000, $1,500 to Sri Lanka, to a commune and a school environment with one of her friends. And the son was around 12, 13, and was sent there for 2.5 months. Here's $1,500 or $2,000, whatever the figure was. It wasn't that much money. And so the kid was safe because the mother's friend was there. And the kid was basically asked to figure it out and do whatever you have to do. So he was safe, and the rest you learn. 2.5 months later, he came back a completely different person. What he had started doing, because $1,500 in a fishing village in Sri Lanka goes a long way.
Absolutely,
So
yeah.
he had started working, he had bought some machines for them. They created a little business out there. He started understanding how they fish and what they do, and he started changing the nets and then investing his money, because you can get fish and you can eat, and life is good. But he invested his money to create a community. And from a very privileged background, this kid started getting to this stage and became a better person. So what I would say to parents is stop being helicopter parents. That's one kind of parentage. And I see another one, which is even worse. From our backgrounds, I'm sure we have those kinds of parents also, is what I call snowplow parents. They clear everything up. Make it easy because my kid's coming through. So I'm snowplowing the way. And then all the way, come on, man. Either you're watching everything or you're snowplowing. The kid won't learn. And when I failed my accountancy exam, that's when my hair fell out, literally like that. Because I told my parents that you taught me everything. You gave me love. You gave me every single thing. You didn't teach me how to fail.
Yeah.
So teach people how to fail. Celebrate failure. Learn how to fail. And call it a learning experience and so on, and then move on from there.
Oh, dude, I love that story. I resonate with that story in so many different ways. So first of all, on the humbling thing, I think over the last 7 years gone through many changes. So I'll give you some context. My audience has heard the story 1,000 times, but guys, Tariq hasn't, so I'm sorry. So 2017, I moved to Amsterdam. I was working with a company there doing sales for a year. The idea was you train for 6 months and then you come back. Now, the program, we get to the end of the program and they're like, you know what? We're not going to renew your contract for the next year. I'm not going to go into details, but fair enough. Fairly or unfairly, that was the result. Now, I remember that I was 27 years old, and my friends and everyone who knew me, there was a certain perception of Khalid. Khalid likes to have fun. He's not serious. He always wants to party, always wants to do all these things. And then when that happened to me, and my friends told me, don't fuck up. We know you. Don't fuck up. And when I went home that day, and I was the only one in the program, and I had to sit on my couch and I was blaming the world and no, I'm going to raise a case and this is bullshit and I don't know what. It was, my cousin sent me a podcast and it was a guy called Dan Pena and he was and it felt like he was talking to me and he's very aggressive and he's like, stop being a bitch and blaming everyone. This is your fault, whatever. Don't ask me why. It just hit home. And I got up, I looked in the mirror and I'm like, it's your fault. And I still get those, even when I say it now, I still get those emotions because it was the first time in my life I took accountability for my actions. I'm like, yeah, maybe that wasn't fair, but it wouldn't have happened without it being I definitely had a hand to play in it. Now, that was the catalyst, that moment, Tariq, was the catalyst. And I tell this to everyone. That is why I'm sitting in front of you here today. So that's why when you told me that story, it just took me back to that. I remember that pain. I remember how it is. And just like you, alhamdulillah, I've had a very privileged life, but because of that, I paid for it later because I didn't know how to fail. I thought I have to live a certain lifestyle. So I really love that story and I really resonated. And what I really appreciate about what you do, which I don't think you get enough credit for, that story is on your website.
It is.
It's not just my successes, it's my failures, which is so counterintuitive to how we would traditionally think about. My website needs to say that we are the best and we have never failed and we have never had these. Now, when it comes to failure, I know it's everyone, like you look at all the most successful people in the world. Anyone to get to where they are at their current stage in life has failed something. But I believe that there's still, and even like I can logically understand how to get over failure. But for example, if my business didn't work out or something like that, I'll speak very honestly, emotionally, that would be a very, very tough pill to swallow.
Mm-hmm. It is, and I think you used a key word there, and that is accountability, to take it upon. And I know it's a very old thing. When I point my finger at you, one finger is pointing at you, 3 are pointing back at me. This is God, nature, things you can't control. So 75% of every single thing that happens to you, minimum 75%, is your responsibility, and you're accountable for that. And this is things which we cannot control. So when people come to me and say, well, we need this, we need that, so I said, okay, the customers are not doing this and we can't sell that. And I'm saying to myself, okay, you're blaming the customer, you're blaming the market, you're blaming the economy, that's that one finger. Once you have taken responsibility and done 100% of what you can do, then I'll talk to you about this. What that means is, have you got your planning done properly? Have you got your database sorted out? Have you made the right number of calls? Have you done the follow-up, et cetera, et cetera? Those are these three fingers. And then you can start blaming the customer, the economy, and so on. So 8 out of 10 problems I used to resolve just by asking that question, have you done 100%? At that point in time, I'm listening. So taking accountability is absolutely critical as we look forward.
And so I wanted to kind of, moving on from the accountability part and this part of the conversation, I wanted to now, Tariq, so like I said, you're a futurist, right? And as we've touched on in the conversation, it's hard for us to think about things in the future and comprehend exponential change. Now, you gave a talk in 2018, and you gave a talk 2 weeks ago, now in 2025. And what's cool is that we're having this conversation now is I can ask you about the predictions you made in 2018 and how they played out now and how we're going to move forward. So I want to start first in something that you said in 2018, which I don't think has changed in 2025. If anything, it might have gotten worse. So I want to get your 2 cents. So in 2018, you said we need to build the right side of the brain. And now in 2025, as you've touched on in this conversation, the more technological we become, the more human we need to become, i.e. more right side brain. Now, it's interesting you've been championing right side of the brain and the human emotion and like the soft skills and the ethics and all that kind of stuff since 2018. And you've talked about how AI now moving forward needs to enable us to become more human. And technology and knowledge is going to be commoditized, and the humanity or these things are going to be the new currency of today. As it stands now, before we look at what's going to happen, as it stands now, reflecting over the last 7 years, do you feel like we've moved forward, or do you think AI has set us back?
Interesting question, or interesting framing in terms of the question. 7 years ago in 2018, I think one of the events that I spoke at was the largest entrepreneurship event in Poland, in Europe. And that's exactly why I made this prediction about AI and about trust. People thought that I had become a priest. He's found God. He's talking about trust and ethics and all of this kind of stuff in AI. But I predicted it at that stage. It's actually quite humbling for me that a lot of what I was saying then, which people thought I was an idiot, I was a maverick, I lost the plot, and old age, middle age crisis has hit me too early. But today they're all coming true. And now when I talk about trust, every conference that I go to is right at the top, and ethics right at the top. So I think I feel good that a lot of my predictions are actually coming true. That's the first thing. The second is that people have caught up with the jargon. They've caught up with a lot of technologies, but a lot of our technologies are really just running away from us. And the way I look at AI is that the AI missile has been launched. I watched Mission Impossible last night, and I'm still figuring that out, and we'll talk about AI going dystopian and rogue. So the missile has been launched. Okay, where it ends, we don't know yet, and there are two ends to this: a dystopian AI world or a utopian AI world. And I'm more of a techno-optimist, so I actually see the utopian side of it. I have a great innate belief in human ingenuity and our survival instinct. We have survived, and I think we will continue to adapt and survive. However, the next 5 to 10 years are going to be brutal because a lot of things will change. A lot of things will transform, no change. A lot of things will be reinvented, and we need to be looking at completely new things. So, for example, 70 to 80% of the jobs that will exist in most industries by 2030 do not exist today. 70 to 80%. So therefore, when I'm sitting in a room of 100 people, I say 70% of you will be doing a different job to what you're doing today. Now, how do you hire people for jobs that don't yet exist, for attributes and skills that you don't yet know? And that disconnect is not happening. The HR people and stuff like that are still just not getting it. And I think that bridge needs to come together. So I'll go back to what you asked, the key question. How do you hire these people for the future? You hire them on purpose. What is their core purpose in life? What do they wish to do and wish to achieve? What does life mean? Then ethics, vitality, flow, mindfulness. These are the kind of attributes that you need. This is the new checklist for hiring people. The graduation, the degree just gets you in the door, doesn't get you the job. But purpose, ethics, vitality, and all of those elements, empathy, they are the 3, 4, 5, 6 questions. And you need to build your list of questions you ask. So give me a moment of where you described, that you showed empathy, that you're an empathetic person. Give me an example where you were tested on your ethics and what decision did you make. Give me an example of a difficult environment but you remained in flow. Give me an environment where you were absolutely exhausted and how did you figure shit out?
Yeah.
Those are the new questions when you hire people now. As opposed to, so how many years did you work there? And, and what was your, outcomes and results and stuff like that. Those are fine, but that's the first 10%. And you get inside. But the vast chunk of the questions in the future, I mean, we're doing hiring people with facial recognition and stuff like that. I mean, what a load of crap. Yes, you can go past a gate because of that. But ultimately, you need to understand these core elements. So, your question, where are we today? Are we in a better place? I think we are in a better place because we're way better informed. Information is totally commoditized, therefore democratized. And I find this thing very empowering on the one hand, but very scary on the other. Again, the two sides. Because AI and a lot of the data and stuff that goes behind it, it knows everything. So it's omniscient, omnipotent, it's all-powerful, like Mission Impossible yesterday. So if it's omniscient and omnipotent and omnipresent, which is everywhere, which was the entity in Mission Impossible, that is God, effectively, as we understand the whole concept of God.
Yeah.
And my concern is that I have watched 3 movies, and Mission Impossible was one of them, and this was the second version of it. Heart of Stone, which was Gal Gadot, and the other movie called Stealth. All 3 of them was AI going rogue. Too much data, too much control. And the one thing that was interesting with the Heart of Stone, with Gal Gadot, was that in the end, the conclusion of the story, the entire story, was that AI was getting it right 96% of the time. But for the final 4%, we need human beings for judgment, wisdom, ethics, morality. Why? Because there was a decision that had to be made to bomb a certain place, and they didn't realize that that place had 100,000 people and 50,000 kids because they hadn't done all of their research. So these 2 planes, one was an AI plane and the other one was a normal plane. And when the captain of the normal plane saw the kids and stuff like that, we are not going to bomb this, we're not going to nuke this place. While the AI plane was saying, hang on, this is my job, this is my function, this is my objective, I will bomb this place. Because AI is stupid. The AI does not have morality, it doesn't have conscience, it doesn't have mindfulness. We do. And when the pilot, the captain, basically said, I'm ordering you not to do it, the AI actually laughed and said, I'll do it anyway. And he said, why? He said, because you trained me. Because all of these pilots are mavericks. They break rules. So the AI learned how to break rules and wanted to break the rule to bomb this place in spite of that. So the 4% in the future is still our morality, our conscience, our humanity, our sense of justice, our sense of wisdom. So, long answer. I know I just meandered all over the place. Are we in a better place than we were 7 years ago? Yes, because we are way more productive than we were 7 or 8 years ago. Am I more concerned right now? Yes, I am, very much so. 2 or 3 reasons. One of them is technology is just galloping too fast. It is really going on an exponential curve. Exponential, a simple definition of exponential is the acceleration is accelerating.
Yeah.
So it just goes
Literally,
straight.
yeah.
And our minds are linear, and the delta is growing. So first is speed. The second is our understanding of that speed and the speed of change. So I think that also needs to start coming together. The third is actually understanding where our role as a human starts clicking in, and I think we are sort of losing the plot on that one a little bit, and the reason is that, and I'm going to sound very socialistic, but I guess that's where I am. I am socially conscious. I think that our hyper-capitalistic system in the world today, particularly in technology, is going to potentially destroy us. Because the incentive is only money, the incentive is growth, the incentive is acceleration on that exponential curve. The incentive is only competing. The top 5, 10 companies are competing with each other. They're now $1 trillion companies, then they're going to become $3 trillion companies, they're going to become $10 trillion companies, they'll become bigger than most countries in the world.
Yeah.
Okay? Now, with that kind of money, you can buy anything, as Elon Musk clearly demonstrated. He was the second most powerful man in the United States, effectively. It cost him, what, 300 million of donations and participation and a few bits and pieces here and there. He's worth 400 billion. It's a rounding error. He doesn't even know where it fits in. And for that rounding error, I control the largest country and economy in the world in so many different ways. He's taken all the data. He's done lots and lots of things. Where I'm going with this is that we need to start building a sense of conscious capitalism, responsible capitalism. We don't need to be that rich. I think after $1 billion, even Bill Gates said that. You don't even know how much money you have, and even if you spend it, you can't. Once you have 10 billion, you can't spend it. It's too much. Once you have 100 billion, you really, really can't spend it. And then you do crazy shit. Then you start buying countries and going to Mars or space.
Yeah, because nothing else to do.
Nothing else to do.
Yeah.
And anybody who can make that kind of money, actually, it messes with the brain massively. So hypercapitalism is one problem. And because of that, the incentives are very, very skewed against us.
Of course.
And if it makes money, they will make money. Take the healthcare system. It sucks. And you take hospitals, and you talk about healthcare. It's not healthcare, it's sick care.
Mm-hmm.
You go to a hospital because you get sick.
Yeah.
So hospitals, insurance companies, pharma, and food. You put these 4 together, those are the 4 legs of the table, which is what's screwing our health. But all of those 4 are in there is no incentive for prevention, for holistic living, for whatever. So it's all about the money. So therefore, because the rate and speed of transformation is so fast now, you make money really, really, really fast. And that's why there's this. I mean, crypto is Mickey Mouse. It's like 1 to 2 trillion in a world economy of money moving, which is about 400 trillion. The GDP of the world is over 100 trillion. So it represents less than 1%. It's really not but people are chasing it and running after it. And,
that's true.
And so on, because they feel that they can get rich. So we need a reset.
Yeah, I think so.
We need a big reset.
I think so.
We need a reset where we celebrate different things. And when I was leading companies, I used to, and I had to adjust myself a couple of times, is what do I measure and what do we celebrate in the company? I was a hardcore salesperson when I was in my early days. I was doing really, really well, accelerating massively. So the only thing that was celebrated in the company, me as general manager, regional manager, was sales, revenues, growth. But that was going like that. But my revenue was my profit was pretty flat. So at the end of a couple of years, a couple of really successful years, Revenue growth 100%, profit growth 10%. Where's the delta? Why? Yeah, I didn't give a toss about depreciation. I mean, buy this shit. Just keep doing it.
Double down.
Double down. And then just so what? I wasn't looking at the bottom line. I was basically celebrating sales, and everybody used to come back to me and tell me stories about new sales. What I learned after that, and it was a big thing for me, and I think your audience should do that also, is ask different sets of questions and celebrate different stories.
Yeah.
And look for different stories. Tell me, something about your main client. Tell me about their life. If they don't know a little bit about them, then I think you're struggling. Tell me a story. Start celebrating empathy. Start celebrating going the extra mile, even if it doesn't make the money. Start celebrating collaboration between teams. Give them a bonus for collaboration, not for sales.
Yeah.
Start celebrating failure. Failure means taking chances. This is how Amazon came together, is because they couldn't say no. And at the end of each 3 months, their KPI was, how many projects have you failed? And the reason is that, are you pushing the boundaries sufficiently? Because only then you screw up. And my point is, how much have you learned?
Exactly. Exactly.
IBM insisted in the early days on failure, and then after failing big, somebody said, "Well, you're going to get fired," and he said, "If I fire you, you just made $1 million mistake. That's the most expensive training you ever had.
yeah, that's true.
I'm not going to bloody fire you. I'm going to keep you here, and you're going to live here, and you're going to work your ass off and recover from it."
Yeah.
So it's a completely different set of thinking and a new kind of questions to ask.
Sorry to interrupt you, Tariq. When it comes to
I'll shorten my answers because I know I'm.
No. I love the context. The context is the juice for me. I love it. So it helps me ask better questions. So I appreciate it. Look, you said something, and it what you talked about now kind of encapsulates everything we've talked about so far. You said we need a big reset. Now, I agree 100%. Now I'm gonna play. My job on this podcast is to play devil's advocate because that makes for a more interesting conversation. Now, based on what we've discussed so far, Tariq, technology is advancing at a crazy rate, we've said, accelerating. Now, you've mentioned that the future has already happened, but it's badly distributed. Now,
Correct.
So then that makes me think of a lot of questions. First of all, I'm going to start here. When we talk about the big reset, if we're just reflecting on the conversation we've had so far, it all has to start with the trust, because without the trust, we can't even sit down to start even thinking about this. And then when you talk about the technology race and how it's going at a crazy rate, the problem is there's no one to rein everyone in, because they're going to be like, oh, why should I? He's going faster. He's going to beat me if I stop. And how can I trust that he's not doing what these new rules have said we are?
Yeah.
And it kind of it fuels into everything you've talked about a hyper-capitalist society and the problems with that, and why competition is being fueled so much. So if the future has already happened, Tariq, and trust is the currency, and we need this big reset, and if it's already happened, the question I have is, if it's already happened, that means, I don't think consciously in the general global consciousness, we're aware that it has.
Correct.
I think we still think that, this is coming in the next couple of years. And a lot of the conversations you hear about AI, even in your talks, it talks about what's gonna happen. But as you said, it's already happened. So then the question I have is, okay, there's gonna be a tipping point where we get from that a couple of select people know it's already happened and that is distributed. There's gonna be I guess my question is, when or what needs to happen? What's that consolidation event that's going to wake everyone up?
We don't trust our institutions. All of the big institutions controlling our lives at this point in time, whether it's the United Nations, World Bank, IMF, World Health Organization, World Trade Organization, you name it, they were created 85 years ago, post-Second World War, for a problem that existed then, post-war, for issues that existed then, and they've done reasonably well for about 60, 70, 80 years. But they do not address today's problems. If you cannot control data, you're not addressing the problems. If you can't control AI going rogue, then you haven't addressed the problem. If you cannot look after sustainability the way we need to save our planet, you're not looking after that. If you can't look after energy the way we need to, what we need in the world, then that's another problem. So if you take that, all of the institutions need to be redefined. So this Bretton Woods conference that happened in 1944-45, and that really reset the world. And it kept us going for 70, 80 years. Non-proliferation treaties for nuclear weapons. Hasn't been a single nuclear incident after the Second World War, after Japan, Nagasaki and Hiroshima. So non-proliferation treaty worked. To me, AI and data is a bigger weapon than anything that nuclear can do, because AI and data, and now with generative AI, it can actually learn and grow, and then it goes sentient AI, and it can even go faster. So actually it is more dangerous. For the very first time in our humanity, we are producing something which can potentially be more intelligent than us. In what is repetitive tasks and so on, the human things will still be ahead, but 80 to 90% it could be faster than us. So the reset, the old control delete to me is all of these institutions need to start again. So there should be a global data institute, data and AI institute. There should be a manifesto around energy. Let's look at our education system and redefine education as we know it, because all over the world I go, 70 to 80% of students that are coming out of schools and colleges are not trained for the future. There are no future studies in our classes. There are no empathy sessions in our thing. And I was at American School, very close by here, and I made my speech, and I asked, it was a 300 educationists, and I said, so do you have a curriculum in a class on empathy? No. Why not? You keep saying it's really important. Do you have one on trust? No. But trust is something that you can research and work on and understand the cognitive aspects, etc., etc. All of these things need to come into our schools, not just history, geography, because that information is now available. It's ubiquitous.
Yeah, it is.
So we don't need that. So I think this reset. So things can happen. And when I say the future has happened, it's just uneven. They're happening in research labs. They're happening in little companies. I meet lots and lots of these extreme future companies, and the kind of stuff that they're doing is mind-boggling. It hasn't been commercialized, a lot of it, but it's actually coming to us really, really quickly. To give you an example, by 2035, you and I potentially will have a digital twin. And that digital twin, if they need to work on my kidney, they'll work on the digital twin. So just like we have a cell phone, we'll have a digital twin. Today it costs a couple of $1 million to do it. In 10 years, with all the rate of the reduction, it may cost $20,000. Okay, so maybe a little more, but an affordable number, the price of a car or something like that. So digital twins are coming in. That's going to change the world again. We haven't even gone into genetics and so on. There's a lot of development there. Do you know that the assessment is that there will be anywhere between 8 to 10 billion humanoid robots by the year 2040? 10 billion, which basically will double the world's population. So I would want a manifesto and a structure that will manage and control these humanoid robots. I remember, I'll share a quick story. I was at the European Union in a conference, and I was amongst a group of people, and we were discussing, this is 2018 actually, 2018, 2019, and they were discussing an ethics manifesto for drones and for drones actually it was. And I remember distinctly 2 hours, everybody was talking technology and this, and we can do that, and we can make this weapon, and we can do that. And I said, so I'm the naive guy here. I've just recently tried to become a futurist, but so may I ask a very simple question? They said, please go ahead. And so we program everything? Yes. We write the algorithm? Yes. We control it. We put all of the ethics and decisions on that. So why can't, and the answer was yes to all of them. So I said, why can't we have a very, very simple rule? Drones will not be produced to kill humans. Full stop. And anybody who breaks that, we have regulations in airlines, we have regulations for financial services and money laundering. We have Why don't we have regulations for companies that are building drones to kill? This is 2017-18. And half the room burst out laughing. He said, well, that's our number one app, and that's the number one solution. That's where you make the money. And that's where I'm saying hypercapitalism clicks in, because that's where you make the money. So the future armies are going to be drone armies and humanoid robots. Now, just like Mission Impossible yesterday, that humanoid robot is going to make a decision about bombing 100,000 people or not. 96% of the time it'll get it right, but 4% when it gets it wrong, it's going to kill 50,000 kids. So we have to go back and revise this at a policy level, at a school level. We need leaders we can work with and trust and be inspired by. And just sort of finishing the humanoid robot story, we could potentially take those 10 billion robots and get them to work to clean the oceans, get them to work as farmers, get them to do all of the dirty work that human beings are doing, releasing us human beings. Moses didn't come down with the 11th commandment and say, the week has got to be 40 hours and 5 days, 8 hours a day. That's bollocks. We created that. It was maybe we work 2 days a week and the humanoid robot does the work for us. In this, there'll be some haves and have-nots. And there'll be 10 to 20% of the people will never make it. Okay. Now, when I talk about AI, I talk about care and caring. The care part is look after the cybersecurity, look after data, look after all of those key components and the guardrails that AI should be looked after. And caring is look after the people who cannot cope. Use it to enhance the quality of life and our planet and so on. So for AI, we need care and caring both.
Yeah.
And I think that is...
That marriage.
That marriage has to start coming together. And this is how we start redefining and repositioning ourselves as we go forward with a complete reset. And one of them is we don't need billions. We should start celebrating something else. Start celebrating, I don't know, love.
And you know it's so funny. It's like what I've really taken away from this what you've kind of shone a light on what I think we all so instinctively know, but it's not like in your face every day that it's like the world is so financially driven, irrespective of ethics, trust, cost, the impact it has on like different parts of the world. I love how you said that things are going to be like, as you mentioned earlier in our conversation about critical thinking and how, because knowledge now is going to be democratized and so on. And that's why all these soft skills are coming and and again, I love the humanoid robot example because it's like, okay, yeah, we can make all these, but what do you want to do with them? Do you want it to improve the world or do you want it to destroy the world? Because it can do both.
It can absolutely do both. And I would say for the 20% of the people who won't be able to make it as perhaps you and I would be in the other 80%, again, a very social concept of universal basic income. And I've been talking about UBI since 2017, 2018, interestingly enough. I used to do some work with the Ministry of Finance, and I brought in a very interesting speaker from Kenya talking about universal basic income and how it worked in Norway, how it worked in Kenya, and they've tested it. And just because you're making enough money that you can survive, the general consensus is you become lazy and you don't do anything. There's no incentive to work anymore. Interestingly enough, it's the exact opposite. 70 to 80% of the people, actually the moment they have this sense of safety, that my health's covered and I have a roof over my head, they start becoming creative. Because the human need for growth and development is an intrinsic need. And once you take the shackles away, people grow.
Yeah.
And they create new opportunities. So perhaps these humanoid robots will be part of the solution for universal basic income. Every poor person, every poor environment has these kinds of robots and they are geared to look after them, etc. So I think, again, dystopian, utopian. We are at that inflection point at this point in time. probably for the next 5 to 10 years maximum.
Do you think no matter which way it tilts, it's ever going to be irreversible, or it'll be too late?
It is not going to. We are already at the irreversible place, past the irreversible thing.
Okay.
Whatever has happened, and the horse is bolted. It really is a question of now where are the guardrails and so on. And I mean, I use this metaphor sometimes that AI is like a horse. It's bigger than you, stronger than you, faster than you. But we need to know how to control it and have the guardrails and ride it and so on. And I think that's the way we need to see AI in that context. A lot of people ask me, and the audience is probably thinking, will AI replace us? What do you think? Will AI replace us?
I've heard your talk, so I don't want to ruin the answer.
All right. So I don't believe AI will replace us. Certain parts of the work that we do, which are repetitive in nature and so on, will be replaced. However, that's only half the answer. The other half of the answer is we have to see the logic, the construct of the job that you're in, the architecture of the functions that are happening around us, how much of that is changing. So just learning how AI is learning PowerPoint or Excel, but then you have to apply it in the right kind of environment. So an easy example is our dad's time, we used to have typists and stenographers, and their role was speed and accuracy, because every time you made a mistake, you had to start all over again, use Tipex and all this kind of stuff.
Oh, Tipex. I've heard about Tipex in ages.
Exactly. Put the right bucket. And so now, word processing came in. She could learn word processing and be AI conscious and so on. But now you and I use that. Mm-hmm. So the whole construct, the logic changed. Now everybody types.
Yeah.
And that's the shift. So it doesn't matter how much AI you know, but the jobs changed. Yeah. So what we need to do is to understand the roles that we have in those jobs, how the logic of that business flow is changing, how the architecture is changing, and then utilize AI to be a tool, to be an enabler, to be something to support us. And I think the world will massively grow because of that.
Yeah. Do you see, because I was a kid at the time, so when the internet bubble was happening, the dot-com boom, because the way I like to compare the two sets, because that was such a massive technological shift, which is on the birth of why we're here today. And now AI is kind of like that next thing that's going to take us into this brand new question mark of a world that we're going to go into. Is it like, because I'm sure back then there was also people asking questions like, oh, this will never take my job and this will never happen. And obviously we're getting the same questions now. But I'm torn. I'm like, it's this, yes, the same. It's another big technological shift. You're going to be asking the same questions. Some of them are going to be replaced. I don't know why though. Maybe I'm wrong, but I feel with to compare AI and the internet, I'm like, yes, this gave you, let's say, a 5x multiple in capability. This is giving you like 100. So I don't know if it's an apple to apple fair comparison.
No, it's not an apples to apples comparison. Internet gave us a platform and connectivity and so on. AI is giving us a form of intelligence, not complete human intelligence, but a form of intelligence. Intelligence is very difficult to describe and difficult to define. When we go to university, we're only tested on two things, verbal and numerical. But we have spatial intelligence, we have sensual intelligence, we have kinesthetic intelligence, and 10 different types of intelligences. We need to build on all of those. What AI, and with Gen AI and more sentient AI in the future, what it's doing is actually taking away a lot of our roles, and more so. And we need to be very careful in how we structure that.
We're like losing the locus of control in a way.
That's right, because you're creating things which are smarter. The other one is when I spoke about humanoid robots. Is I watched a movie, and I stumbled on it on Netflix. It was an Indian movie, Bollywood movie, and I watched it, and there was this guy, and he wasn't getting married, and his mum wanted him to be married, and his aunt wanted him to be married, etc. In a typical Bollywood plot. And then the aunt used to work in a very advanced robotics factory in the US, and he went there, and he was matched by an assistant. And her assistant's name was Sifra, super intelligent female robotic assistant. Okay. Sifra. gorgeous. But apart from being gorgeous, she knew everything. She had swallowed all his social media, his habits, things, and she was very sentient. And I mentioned this even in my TED talk and so on, is that because she was sentient and we gave her a humanoid form, it was actually quite dangerous because the guy was falling in love. And halfway through the movie, I was falling in love. She was perfect. She was amazing. And she understood him completely and then knew his moods and stuff. And Sifra, can you pay this bill? Or Sifra, can we go out and have some fun? Whatever. I think we have to be careful giving humanoid shapes to robots.
That's such an interesting
It should
point.
look like this,
like a box.
block.
Yeah.
Not a shape. And everything that's because kids see them as friends. Since we used to have horses and dogs, now we'll have little robots running around as our pets, and them potentially being more intelligent. So we're going to start losing that. So there are lots of social and ethical issues around that, but there are a lot of psychological factors that you can fall in love with an entity which is not human, and these kinds of things will happen. I
Your
forgot the
Netflix
question.
is all probably just like dystopian AI stuff.
I mean, so the question that you asked was that are we in a better place than we were before? And the answer is yes, but we have to be careful. But we really have 5 years, and it is not irreversible. We need to learn how to ride it. So we need to be, as we go into the future, we need to be like surfers on a surfboard. And in 1 minute, let's say an hour of surfing, you are on the surfboard 1 or 2 minutes. The other 58 minutes, you're listening to the wave and listening to the trends and listening to, your ability to listen to the wave becomes sharper and sharper. And then you know when the wave is coming, and then you get. That is how we need to think about the future. Yeah. We need to be surfer dudes and surfer ladies. And we need to ride these waves as they come.
Yeah.
We need to find a moral center. We need to be able to celebrate more human things. And I go back from where I started. The more technological the world becomes, the more human we need to be. And I think that's a really important piece.
On this point, so earlier in the conversation, you talked about the philosopher that you mentioned, how the people the literate of the future are the ones who cannot unlearn, learn, and relearn, right? Yeah. So now we're reaching a stage where, and it kind of touches on everything that we've talked about today, is we are all, even in this conversation, we're going through an unlearning and we're relearning and coming up with new ideas and new perspectives on how to move forward. So I know in 2018 you launched the Butterfly Project. Yes. with a goal of ending education but celebrating learning, which I loved, and you had a goal of 1 billion people by 2025 in association with Professor Tony Bazan. If I've said that, I hope I've said that correctly.
Correct.
So I'm just curious because you're actively involved in trying to make everything you're talking about happen. So Here we are, we're in 2025. How have we done so far? And regardless of where we are, where do we need to go from here to the next stage?
Yeah, I'm sad to report that this has been one of my failures in life, and with the best of intentions. I was at Wharton Business School. We were doing a leadership program, and we were asked to do 3 things. We were asked to first write about our business. This is 1999, in the year 2050. And so that was easy for me. I created that. Then they said, you have 7 days to live. What will you do? How will you change your life? That was very painful. We had to write an essay and share with the whole group. But we sort of managed.
Was this the tombstone story?
Yeah. The third one was that what would you have on your tombstone? And what is your epitaph? And how do you write that? And I got stuck. I didn't know, because I was super successful. I was accelerating in everything I was doing. I was in the rat race. I may be a good rat, but I was still in the rat race.
I was still in the race.
I'm a nice rat, I'm a cute rat, I'm a decent rat, but I'm still a rat. So, and I pledged then, I mean, on my tombstone, and here lies Tariq dead, flat as a pancake, who managed to achieve the impossible and the unexpected, touching millions of lives, and was completely mad. MAD stands for Make a Difference. And my company I still have today is called MAD, one of my two companies. And MAD is Make a Difference. So it's really important to take a deep breath and say, okay, how do we shape our lives? Sorry, what was the question again?
You had the goal of ending education, celebrating.
Yeah. So I launched in 2004 something called Mobile Aid. I watched at the Mobile Congress in Barcelona, somebody from Smart Telecommunication, a very interesting Filipino gentleman, and he spoke about how Philippines is using SMS. And I was one of the first people in the world who created SMS-based donations. In 2004, when the whole world, there was only, I think, one or two other people in the world who were doing this. I created it here, and I called it Mobile Aid.
Okay.
Aid through mobiles. And people used to laugh at me. And they're saying, why would we send money through an SMS? I said, dude, it's a great billing system. I want a recurring income. It's micro-donation, 10 dirhams, $2, something like that. We won't even think about it, but let's help people in this way. That was my original plan, 2004 and 5. This is after 9/11, a lot of restrictions, a lot of controls, and people didn't believe it. You remember earlier on I said how sometimes you shouldn't be first.
Yeah.
I was first, and I was 3 or 4 years ahead of the game. 4 years later, the tsunami happened in Indonesia, and 60-70% of the donations came on mobile. And everybody was like, holy shit. What that idiot was saying was actually true. But I was asked not to, I was asked by Etisalat and others to close down, because they said this could be used for political donations or religious donations or anything else, and we don't want that. So you can't do it. So that was the seed of me trying to build my legacy. In 2012, 2013, I relaunched it, thinking I'm in a better place now, and I'd earned a bit more money and I will spend it, so I built all of that. And that's part of where we launched the Butterfly project. Butterfly was really going from caterpillar to butterfly. Tony Buzan, was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize for Education twice, but he didn't win, but he was on the final list. He was the world's #1 in creative thinking. He set up Mensa, and he was a great intellect, and it's sad. He was known as the Plato of our times. So I was extremely privileged that I was working so closely with Tony. Both our ambitions and our legacies basically aligned and collided. So we said, end of education, long live learning. And learning how to learn, learning how to think, thinking about thinking, which is metacognition, that is how we need to learn for the future. When you go to school, you learn like that, you read like that, in black and white, and then like that. Actually, our mind is in multicolor. We understand metaphors. You give it an idea, and the mind goes like that. This is how the mind works, not like this. So actually, our entire schooling system slows us down. So what Tony and I were doing was to go, and we went to Bangladesh, we went to Pakistan, we went to Ethiopia, we did in the UK, we did many, many, many things in Poland, UAE, UK, and everywhere. And Tony unfortunately died, so that slowed us down. But before he had died, I'd run out of money. Charity and giving is an extremely brutal space. And what I was doing, what Tony and I were doing, was reinventing philanthropy, because my social platform, my Butterfly project, the holding company was called MAD, which is Make a Difference. And the branding that we had was 100% MAD, which meant that we give away 100%. So if you gave me 100 dirhams and said, please give it to a kid, and I pay 20 dirhams and take money out for an Uber, and I give you the receipt, so you audited receipts, but I give only 80. You'll say, what a jerk. I gave him 100 dirhams, he's only given 80. extrapolating that towards companies, they were, at that point in time, they were taking 30, 40, up to 50%, companies like the Red Crescent and Save the Children Fund and so on, in fundraising. So I said, I'm going to solve the fundraising problem. That's the problem I was solving while we were doing the learning piece. And then 2013 and 2014, when I was relaunching it, I again was ahead of the game. I said, micro donations will be very, very easy. It'll be in touch. I spoke to WhatsApp. I went to the US and I spoke to Instagram in California, to the deputy CEO. I spoke to her. All I said was, $1 once a year. That's all we need. We change the world. And that's what so my vision was massive. Tony was there. We did a lot of things. We raised a lot of money, helped a lot of people, but ran out of steam because the amount of resistance that I got, because people in charities and the social environment, people didn't understand a social enterprise concept. I said, I will not take any money from your 100 dirhams that you give me, but I'll build a brand, I'll build a podcast, I'll build some merchandising, I'll do something else using my brand called MAD. So I will, the donation will be protected. In Arabic, it's amana, it's money held in trust.
Yeah.
So money is held in trust. Therefore, we're not allowed to touch it. I mean, even on the day of judgment, we will be asked if we went into our amana. Even God won't forgive us.
Yeah.
So, and that's our core belief system, that if I take money away from you and you gave it to me with amana, that we need to protect it. That was my philosophy. It was changing philanthropy.
Okay.
And I failed. Today. I'll get back to it at some point in time. Now I'm doing it in different dimensions and so on. So, and interestingly enough, when we were doing the Butterfly Project and we have a lot of videos and stuff like that, we used to literally, this was in Pakistan, we went there in one of the poorest schools. There were some like 1,500 teachers, and Tony and I were teaching together there. And one of the things we asked them to do is to open their minds. They all had colors, and we had walls, white walls, and they had to create a butterfly, draw a butterfly. Every single teacher, 95% of them were women from very poor backgrounds. They all had a beautiful butterfly in them. So each one of us had that beauty within us, and that was so touching and inspiring. And these very poor ladies who were working for charity in charity schools and so on, they had never seen this before, that somebody gave them a little bit of attention and time. Will I resurrect it? 100%. Will I do it before I die? Absolutely. Will I do it differently? Probably. I mean, I even had one of my other ideas was TEDx, which is, I said I will, and when I created Mad Talks, I said we'll create the, and I launched the podcast platform in 2016.
Yeah.
Guess what? 3 or 4 years too early. You can launch it now and make money out of it. 2016, they thought, why the hell would we listen to a podcast and some guy, talking away? I saw it, and I saw even the audio part of it.
Yeah.
And but I was ahead of the game, and I was wrong to be too early.
First of all, it's. Again, one thing I've learned from our conversation today, Tariq, is what you think, like, and it kind of touches on the business example you were talking about, which is what's the essence? What are you trying to do? So, like, for example, and I brought that into when you were talking about the Butterfly Project. It wasn't, yes, the learning was a part of it, but the essence was we want to change, philanthropy. And as we've been going through this conversation, I've been like, ruminating. I've been thinking about so many different things you've said, and one thing that has been like screaming in my head, which is like, you mentioned that in some of your talks, and this was in 2018 and in 2025, and you said that, and you've spoken to, and touching on, pause, I'll get back to that. Touching on the podcast, so that's where I wanted to go. I know you've spoken to over, when we were backstage and we were talking and you're asking me, a lot, and we were talking, I have a podcast. And when I say like I've done 170 episodes, I walk around like, oh yeah, who's done that? And then I sit down, he's like, I've done like 1,500, and I'm like, damn, all right, there's levels to this game. My bad, okay. And the question I wanted to ask you You've been around the world, traveled, given speeches, but more I want to focus more on the interview side that you do with Voices of the Future, which is your podcast, and Mad Talks.
Which I have the book with me.
Yeah, please, at the end, I would
yeah.
like to showcase that for everyone to see.
Yeah.
Because I have my own answer, so I'm curious for you. I've done 170 episodes. You've done 1,500. My question to you, Tariq, is, throughout all these conversations, out of all the years, if I asked you to explain to me or distill what you've learned about people and humanity through these conversations, what would you tell me?
It's a very deep question, an important one, and my mind has many, many answers to that. Every conversation that I get into, the first thing I do is open up my heart. I genuinely do. So through that flows empathy, through that flows humanity, through that flows vulnerability. Today, I have been vulnerable many, many times. I've spoken about my failures and things went wrong and stuff like that. That builds connection. That builds that I'm real, I'm authentic. So your question is, what was the biggest learning from them? The basic learning is to look at the absolute truth and authenticity with a touch of humanity. And all of these people have stories. Every single one of them has a story. You cannot imagine, in the Voices of the Future, which we did 110 interviews with amazing people. Half of them are love stories.
Really?
They are love stories. They're totally love stories. I mean, they have a loved one who inspires them. I remember Celine Dion, who's the CEO of MTN. And 15 minutes into the podcast, he stopped and he said, I'm not feeling it. And I said, oh God, what have I done? And he said, I want to talk about Maggie. So who's Maggie? Maggie is my wife of 20 years, and she's blessed me with 4 beautiful boys. And she's my inspiration. She's the reason I'm CEO today. She's the reason I get up in the morning and I go out to work. She and her mother and her family actually, we all want to inspire and enable women, poor women in Africa, 300 million women in Africa. And that's what Serene is doing with MTN, with mobile and mobile technology, and creating the fintech after that. So his entire story on fintech and technology and money and payments in Africa and digital identity was actually about love for Maggie. She's the one who inspired him to go out there and do it. And these are the kind of stories that are there, and there are at least 10 of them, or more actually. So we all have a story, and all we need to do is to get into that emotional level of being able to share that story. A lot of people that I've spoken to are actually in tears. They've actually cried. Not because I tried to make them cry, but they thought about things they haven't thought about. So it's really building trust and building that connection with them at an intuitive level. Very much, very unlike you, you're extremely well prepared. I do my research, but I don't bring any notes, because I feel that when I bring in notes, I get a frame and a structure. What I want to do is let it flow and see where it takes me. Now, do I have elements in there which brings me back?
Sure.
Of course we do.
Yeah.
So summarizing, truth, trust, and authenticity is the anchor. Humanity, empathy, vulnerability, connection, and love is the other. And the power of listening.
Very underrated.
Very underrated, the power of listening. And the power of asking very simple questions. And because when you're listening, not to ask the next question, but to really understand, you ask a better question. And again, going back to 2017-18, I have it on my platform. I did a a session, 30-minute session on the art of questioning and the art of listening. And I was literally used to present it to many companies, the art of questioning. He said, "What's wrong with this dude?" Today, not knowing that, prompting is questions.
Exactly. That's so true.
Is asking questions.
That's
asking
so true.
better
I didn't
questions.
think of that. Yeah.
Prompting is questions.
Yeah.
So, and with education, education shouldn't really be about solutions and about answers. It should be about questions, because machines can give you the answers. So as you graduate, as you get out of high school, the best kids will be the ones who can ask great questions rather than one who have all the answers.
Yeah.
And I think that is part of the learning that I got. And last but not the least, immersion.
Immersion.
Totally in it, and being a part of it.
Yeah.
Which brings me to one more story before you can wrap up. Robert De Niro, I interviewed him, and he allowed me to call him Rob, and so I said, "Rob, I'm such a great fan. I love your acting." And he said, "Young man, I don't act." I said, "Oh shit." So you're in the middle of a podcast. I have 300, 400 people out there. I'm saying, this world iconic actor just kicked me in the balls and told me the question that you ask is a non-question. So I had to recover from that. And my fast recovery there was I took the word acting out. My instinct took over. And I called it work. So I said, "I saw your work in Raging Bull. What was the inspiration and how did you do it?" And he shared the story that he put on 30, 40 pounds, because just like the boxer who wanted to be a loser, became a loser and put on weight and stuff like that, he said, "I wanted to feel like a loser, like an overweight, obese person." And then fight, it took him 7 months to fight his way back. And then he said, "I wasn't acting." Because he was in the part. He actually lived it. So I asked him then, the question is, how do you step out of it? And he said, "Yeah, my wife says that sometimes it takes me months to get out of a part." Meryl Streep is exactly the same. She spent 2 months in Krakow when she was doing Sophie's Choice and lived on the ground and understood, and her nails were dirty, her hair was greasy. Who cares about makeup? What Hollywood makeup said? She was going to be real.
Yeah.
And that is when she won the Oscar. Daniel Day-Lewis, he does exactly the same thing. He becomes the part. So when I get into these interviews, one of the things I have learned is, in that moment, be in that bubble with them. Be with them and hug them. And have done a lot of work in my early days on TV, and I remember one of my directors, producers, she's actually a very famous local lady here. Her name is Maha. I won't give her the surname, but and Maha said, and I was reading the news on the Dubai TV and stuff like that in the good old days, and she said, "You need to hug the lens." I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "You just look at that lens and make love to that lens." And I'm like, what does she actually mean? And people actually liked me a lot and related to me, because when I was looking at the lens, I was connecting with the lens. And it was amazing advice, because that connects you. So when you look down this way, you're unsure. When you look up that way, you're unsure. When you look down this way, you're sneaky. So when you're reading the news, never look down. People won't trust you. If you look up, never look up. The reason is they think you don't know what the hell you're talking about. And if you screw up, you screw up. And you just hug and you caress the lens.
Absolutely.
So these are one of the tricks of podcasting is caress the lens.
Well, that's a new one to me. I hope I've been caressing you guys these past couple hundred episodes.
Yeah.
I really resonate with what you said, Tariq, in the sense of the authenticity, the vulnerability, building that connection. What I've learned through my journey so far of speaking to people is, like you said, everyone has a story. Everyone is different. And even if you have the same conversation about the same topic with a different person, it's a brand new experience. And I don't think sometimes, in recordings, what happens, you might record, oh, we forgot to press the record button. When we redo that conversation, I'm sorry, there's a beauty and authenticity and originality in the moment of a conversation that can never be replicated. We could redo this whole thing, ask you the same question, it's going to be a completely different conversation.
100% right. Yeah.
And I love talking to people. This is why I do this show, for literally these conversations. Every week I have the privilege of sitting with amazing people like yourself, and I just get to learn and deep dive and question, and this is how I improve as a person, and I hope I'm creating a platform for everyone to learn along with me and all of us. So Tariq, I just have a couple more questions for you before we round off for today, and this has been a fucking fantastic conversation, so thank you so much, man. I really appreciate your time. First of all, I wanted to touch on this. I think in both TEDx talks, or maybe it was the talk you gave at Hack Seasons, you said something which is humanity is at a crossroads. Now, humanity was at a crossroads, I think, in 2018, and now it's at a crossroads again. Here we are now in 2025. The question I have is, are we ever not at a crossroads?
Good question. And the answer is we're always learning, discovering, etc. But the crossroads that we have today, speed.
Why is today's unique?
Why today is unique is that we have certain dynamics around us, what I call exponential dynamics, which are faster than they've ever been, smarter than they've ever been, more impactful than they've ever been. Much beyond what the human capacity at the moment can handle. What it's building out, which we've discussed in depth, is our moral issues, ethical issues, trust issues. What's bringing out is the disparity of income. So 1% of the people will control 90% of the wealth, and the top 0.1% of the people will control 50% of the wealth. That kind of disparity of income. So there's the shifts are very large and very fundamental. In every major catastrophe in the past, the Spanish flu, 1918-19, the two world wars, Hiroshima, Nagasaki. I haven't been there, but I believe they are beautiful places today. Interestingly enough, after all of these difficult times, people come out stronger. All of them, by definition. So crossroads are not a bad thing in many ways. You can come out stronger. But we need leadership. We need a moral compass. We need some kind of balance that will get us back on track. So the difference between any other crossroads to today is that today is exponentially, not even 100x, but 1,000,000x faster.
I think that last point that you said, the rate is what is so significant now. Like, I think that's a really good point that you said, and I love the examples you gave historically that we typically have always come out, stronger. So let's be optimistic about where things are heading, but obviously with a sense of caution, because we don't know where things are going to lay. Now,
another phrase that I'd like to add on to this is that at this juncture, at this crossroads, our rate of learning should be faster than the rate of growth.
Yeah.
And that's the challenge. That is a unique challenge, that our rate of learning should be faster than the rate of growth. Yeah. That could be in a job. So if you're in a job, what you need to learn outside the job, learn about new skills, everything is available now because information is ubiquitous, should be more than what your job needs. That's how you succeed.
Yeah.
So one of my guys, my office, one of my team, we did an annual review and he wanted a salary increase. And I said, can you tell me what you're going to change? How have you accelerated from what the job requires? And what are the extra things you're going to do? He hadn't thought of that in that way.
Yeah.
He said, I've worked hard, I've been on time, I've been efficient. I said, yeah, robots can be efficient. That doesn't... And when I do coaching, when people say I'm efficient, I said, robots are more efficient. I'm reliable. I said, an algorithm and stuff is more reliable. And then you go back to the human skills, because that's what differentiates us. But
Absolutely. And Tariq, to round off our conversation today, I just have 3 more questions for you. So first of all, I wanted to, guys, I'm sure you guys have paid attention to this beautiful book right here, Voices of the Future. Now, I'm going to try to combine 2 things together.
Okay.
You mentioned that this book changed your life and you took a lot of inspiration from this book. I want to understand, how does the inspiration and the impact of this book play into you creating now the equation of the future that you've set out for us?
Brilliant. Thank you for that framing of that question. It's outstanding. When I started writing the book, I had a book in me, and I have, as you can see, lots and lots of stories and so on. So my branding friends and people said, Tariq, you've got a good voice and you are talking about the future. Why don't you write a book called Voice of the Future? And we'll build an Instagram brand, and we'll have a podcast brand called Voice of the Future. So guess what? I fell for my own bullshit. Yes,
it works sometimes.
It works.
Yeah.
I'm going to write a book called Voice of the Future, and it's all going to be about me, myself, and I. And it's going to be my view of the world and how wonderful it is. Total crap. And after finishing off the first chapter, and I was writing and the framework, and I was mind mapping around it, I'm saying, this is nonsense. This is narcissistic. This is self-absorbed. It's not about me. It's about us. It's about a team. And all I did was add the letter S, and it became Voices of the Future. And it exploded. It absolutely exploded, because now there were no egos. Everybody was a part of the thing. And I call it the Symphony of the Future, where all of us are singing together. And in my launch, I took We Are the World, that song.
Oh, yeah.
And I said, that's exactly what we are. All of these people are coming together to shape the future. The way the future and the way the thinking, the essence of the book is that from different industries, different technologies, different backgrounds, people are coming together, and all of these technologies are converging in society and humanity. And then they are diverging. And in these diverging elements, there are unintended consequences, new things we don't understand, and a lot of serendipity, innovation by accident. We don't go out there and plan to do certain things, and new things come out. So that's the process that I went through.
Yeah.
I started writing. I was too slow, because like my professor, Tony Bazan, said to me, I used to write some chapters for his books. He wrote 144 books. He was very, very prolific.
Wow.
So he said, he used to call me Q, because Q is, like in James Bond. It's Q. And he said, Q, the speed between your brain and your hand is too effing slow. The speed between your brain and your mouth is fast. So when I speak and I get into flow and I get into rhythm, that's when I'm at my best. Whether I'm on stage or I'm writing or I'm dictating or whatever, my voice notes are better than what I write. So I said, hang on, why don't I podcast this? So what I ended up doing is doing 110 podcasts of all of these famous people, and the best of the best in their industries and so on. Each podcast, 30, 40-minute podcast, we've been over an hour, you'll have 50 to 60,000 words, times 110. Took all of them and put it into an LLM, into a ChatGPT, trained it, so you can actually query the book and say, what does the book say about love?
Really?
What does this book say about trust?
Great idea.
What does the book say? So all of your podcasts, here's an idea for free. Put it all together, get the transcripts, put it into LLM, you got yourself a ChatGPT. So what is Khalid's, I hope it helps, says about love? And you get an answer. And this dude said about love, that lady said about love, Tariq spoke about trust, and it'll actually summarize it. And it'll be done for you. And you can train it in a day, maybe a week. So that was the thinking. Every single page, every single article has a QR code. And,
amazing.
And you can basically, both audio and video. So you got the physical book, which feels cool. And even inside, when you go inside, this is how I see the world. It's colorful. It's all over the world. And every time, everywhere, you will see a QR code right here. And you go there, so you can watch it anytime. So it's like the Arabian Nights, and I called it storytelling, because whether it's the Bible or the Quran or the Bhagavad Gita or and Homer's Iliad. All of them are a bunch of stories together.
Yeah.
And we get inspired by them. So this is a collection of stories of people's lives. But in this convergence of technology in the future and the divergence, and my job was to actually pull it all together. So all of the podcasts are there. Now, I'm a very optimistic person, so I oscillate at a very high level already. But meeting some of them, talking to some of them, getting deeper, and that immersion that I was talking about, I was levitating at that level. And it opened up my mind, and all my life I have numbed any kind of abrasion or arrogance that I might have. You know, sometimes we have this inner arrogance about we doing so well, we do this, whatever. I've always diminished it. Post this book, cleaned out. Humbling. Amazing people sharing amazing stories with open hearts. Super successful people, many billionaires in there engaging with that. So it gave me a lot of hope. And it changed me from I to us, to we, to a team, to a group, to a symphony. And this is what I discovered from the book. And I was then asked to do a TEDx recently, which was published a couple of weeks ago. And I created something called the equation of the future. And I, inspired by Einstein, is E is equal to mc squared. And everything that we have been discussing, it's completely encapsulated in that equation. E is the exponential dynamics, all the technologies, all the hard stuff, all the changes that are happening in the world, the transformation, all of that is the E. Equals M, which is our mindset, our mindfulness. So the mind is the power, times that multiplier is, to me, is trust. It could be love, it could be joy, it could be anything else. And the C squared is curiosity and creativity. So if you look on the left-hand side is all technology, growth, development, money, power, whatever. And everything on the right-hand side of the equation, mindfulness or mindset, trust, creativity, and curiosity, and any combination of those, all of them are human, and all of them are infinite.
Yeah.
And then when you combine them to the power of this humanity here is the only chance we have to manage this site. And that's the equation, the balance of the equation. And I hope Einstein doesn't mind my borrowing it from him.
I'm sure he's fine. I'm sure he's got enough accolades. He's a happy man.
So that's the essence of who I am and what I am going forward. I can talk about the tech piece and I talk about the humanity piece. Everything is infinite. Here it's exponential, but here it's infinite. Curiosity is infinite. Creativity is infinite. Trust cannot be measured. And mindset creates the future.
Man, I don't know how better to end the show than that, but I do have two more questions for you, because these are questions I ask all my guests. But before I get into that, I wanted to just say thank you, Tariq, for not only coming, for your time for coming on the show, but for bringing the humanity into at a time in the world and into the conversation that is so important, more important than ever, I think. And not only that what I love about that equation is it flips things on its head, because yes, the E is the exponential, is the tech, whatever, but you need so much human input to have any chance of getting that.
100%.
Which is just a different way of looking at things compared to how I think a lot of people are looking at, like, build tech. We don't know why, but we need to build tech and we got to do it faster. And touching on what you said about your book and Voices of the Future, I first thank you for the great idea. For sure, I'll do something like that. But I resonate with that, with how you feel about that. It's this whole podcast, this whole process has been, every week I just keep getting humbled by new, smarter people in different industries who teach me so many things. One thing, Tariq, I think that if I wanted to, on your website, you say something, but you say something that is, I don't know, maybe it's just me, or you say something, but it's something that not a lot of people say. Instead of saying, these are the services, these are my services, and you can pick, learning, advisory, whatever it is, you say, how can I serve? We've talked about language today.
Yeah.
We've talked about all these different things. How can I serve a life of service, which is throughout what you've done with the book and through all what you've learned through these conversations, what you did with the Butterfly Project, what you're doing now with all the talks you're giving? You are a true testament to that sentence of being someone of a life of service. And I just want to say thank you for everything that you've done so far. I have 2 more questions for you to round up our conversation. These are questions I ask all my guests. So Tariq, looking back at your life, either personally or professionally, when I ask you the question, what are you most proud of for yourself? What would you say?
I knew there would be a question like that. I would say 2 moments. One moment was my Harvard graduation and stuff, and I had extra pride because I had come through the failure and then recovered, and I needed this to show to my dad that, you know, your son has arrived, and my mum. And that was a proud moment, for sure. And the second, which probably is closer to my heart, is when I was working on the Butterfly Project and the and my 100% Mad charity project, social project, is many times I was rewarded with various accolades and things like that. But I've had people come to me privately and said, "You've changed my life. You've given me hope. You've..." And I honestly, I choke every time. I mean, I shouldn't. I should be a big boy. But I sometimes have tears in my eyes thinking that I am serving. So whether it's work or it's anybody else, I'm a service leader. I'm a servant leader, even in my business life.
CSO, Chief Servant Leader.
Yeah.
Chief Servant Officer.
Yeah. And so those moments, those collection of moments are very proud moments for me. But those are the quiet ones, the ones nobody sees, the ones that are not announced and not celebrated. To me, those moments in my personal pride is more.
And Anna, I echo that message as well. Like anyone, if someone has, you know, throughout the course of the podcast messaged me like, "Khaled, thank you for that episode. I learned so much. Oh my God, I was going through that thing. I was thinking that." So nothing feels better than that feeling when you know you've helped someone. Nothing, you can't compare. I don't care how much money it is. Nothing will give you that same satisfaction. So I totally agree with that. And for my last question, Tariq, I promise I'll let you go after this. Promise. What is... I know you have maybe 10,000 messages you've given the audience today, but my final question is, what is the message you'd like the audience to go home with today?
We can all make a difference. That's going to be on my tombstone. Life has to be about meaning and purpose. You have to live it with passion. You have to live it with love and joy. And that meaning and purpose is absolutely critical. Find your meaning, whether it's in your home, work, whatever. And whatever you do, give it 150%. You just launch yourself into it. And you screw up, you fall, you get a bloody nose, big deal, doesn't matter. You'll enjoy, get up and start again. So give it 100%, make a difference, and do it with your heart.
There's no try, do it, right?
Just do it.
Tariq, I want to say thank you so much for coming on the show today. Perfect way to end the conversation. I have learned so much from you. We've gone around the world. We've touched on what I really loved about this conversation today. We could have gone be very AI techie, all these are the jobs that come up, but no, it was about the world, about humans, about love and emotion and connection and where we're going. So thank you for making it a human conversation, not the other million tech ones I've had. Tariq, if people want to work with you, reach out with you, connect with you, follow the podcast, where's the best place for us to get in touch?
Tariq.tv is my handle on Instagram. And I'm easily available on LinkedIn. That seems to be my strongest. By the way, anybody can help me on Instagram, please do, because I just don't know how to get my following. I mean, I have very cool content, but I have, you know, embarrassingly few followers. And I think it's just, I'm not using all the right techniques. I think those are the two best ways to get through to me. My website, my company is Exponential with an X. It's exponential.world. But the moment you put Tariq Qureishy, you will find all sorts of links.
Yeah, you'll find everything, guys, I promise.
Yeah, so the digital presence is very much there.
Yeah.
And I think we just need to... and I respond fairly quickly, and it's not as if I'm at that level in my... I'm humble enough to be able to connect with everybody, so sure. It's fine.
Well, we'll make sure to put all of that in the show notes. Tariq, thank you so much again, man. This has been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you. All the best.
Thank you so much.
Cheers.
Guys, everyone listening, please make sure to like, follow, share, and subscribe to the podcast. I hope it helps. Pod on all channels. And as always, guys, hope it helps. Peace. And that's another episode in the bag, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. The goal of this podcast is to provide, as I like to call it, education on demand. We cover a wide range of topics, and the goal is to provide you with the knowledge, the tools, and the insights to improve your lives both personally and professionally. And if you're enjoying the show and you're enjoying the content, if you could please do me the small favor of hitting that subscribe button, would really help me build the show and build the channel, and that's all I ask. Stay tuned for more inspiring conversations, bigger guests, and as always, guys, hope it helps.